One.
Hello, you good people.
Hi there.
Today is July 22nd, 2021, and this is Life on Earth. I'm Robert Nasir, joined, as always, by my better half, my co-host, Amy Nasir.
Hello, fine folks.
And we're glad you're here. We need to talk.
Let's talk.
We need to talk about life on Earth. Because if objectivism is, in Ayn Rand's words, a philosophy for living on Earth, then it stands to reason that as fans of Ayn Rand, as objectivists, you and I, we should be the most successful, the most benevolent, the most gracious, the most street savvy, politically astute, romantically sexy people on Earth. Okay, I've changed that up a little bit from the usual intro because we need to talk. We need to talk about politics and we need to talk about love. You think you already know about politics. You think you already know about love, but I got one or two things to say.
You say those one or two things, Robert.
Damn straight. I was listening to the irrepressible Andrew Bernstein and his Heroes podcast, and he was talking about Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin had 13 virtues that he worked diligently to practice. 13 virtues, and I'm going to read them real quick. Temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. And ever since hearing or reading that list, rather, in Benjamin Franklin's biography, I have worked to exercise these virtues. Yeah. It's been really hard to practice chastity. Well, I've had to kind of redefine it.
Especially for Benjamin Franklin.
Yes, being a notorious skirt chaser. And so I've redefined the term. You know, I mentioned last week that women should be chaste. Yes. And men should study abroad. Well, Benjamin Franklin, of course, studied abroad in France. Quite a few of them, I imagine. So in the context of these 13 virtues, I started thinking, well, what are the other, call them lists, the groups, categories that we absolutely need to know?
Objectivism is so cool because you get to integrate all sorts of interesting ideas, kind of seemingly disparate ideas. And we are going to do that today.
And by the time we're done, you're going to see how this all comes together in ways that will make your life extra juicy. I mean, in ways that will be valuable for you. You can tell we've been on a bit of a saucy topic. I think it has to do with the recent flight of Jeff Bezos.
You got to tell the joke that you told earlier.
Well, everybody was commenting that Jeff Bezos's new spaceship, his rocket that he took, was a bit of a knob, a bit phallic shaped. I don't know why they were surprised. He was determined to come right after Virgin Galactic flew their flight. Of course his spaceship was going to look like that. And apropos of the fact that he was chasing after Virgin Galactic in his knob-shaped ship, you notice that as exciting as it was, it only lasted about 4 minutes in space. Really, how long did you think it was going to last?
But oh my gosh, that's really great, darling. You should go stand-up comedy.
Chastity is out the window.
It's flown out into the space.
But I love these lists. We have 7 virtues. We have Benjamin Franklin's 13 virtues. You know, one of my great projects is to find the kernel of truth in well-loved woo. And you know what we mean by woo, the kind of wooey stuff out there. And Benjamin Franklin's early list of virtues, what he meant by chastity was not to be a virgin or refrain from sex.
Oh.
What he meant was to be judicious in such things.
Yeah, so make sure that you meet a quota. I'm still not getting over your definition of woo as being wooey things.
Well,
that's quite astute.
if people want, If people want more of that, join us on our Sunday show, 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. We need to go on. I've got a lot to get in a very short time, so y'all need to listen fast. We had also talked about the 4 tendencies of Gretchen Rubin, the indispensable personality profiles that reveal how to make your life better and other people's lives better too. Hope you got all that. If not, I'm going to point you, once we're done on social networks, to our show notes for this episode. We'll have links to all this stuff. This is great. Rubin had discovered people fit into 4 tendencies, and I think these are so much better than the usual personality profiles. She noticed that people tend to be either upholders, questioners, obligers, or rebels. I don't know, what would you think? I'm the rebel? Everybody likes to think they're the rebel, but I'm probably an obliger.
I'm just a mix of all 4, really. If anybody's curious about Myers-Briggs and where I'm at, I think I'm at INFP. I'm a total FP. FP all the way.
I'm 3.5 horsepower. Oh, that's not Myers-Briggs, that's Briggs and Stratton. Anyway, I had said that if the new normal isn't, see, people talk about the new normal, what's the new normal, COVID's new normal, but you see, I don't think the new normal is the crisis we're facing. I think the new normal is what comes after it. What we're starting to see, but what we're going to see eventually.
Yes.
What if the new normal is really where we end up on the other side of all of this? What does that look like 6 months from now, by the end of this year? Assume things are wide open. What are you going to do about all that when there's no longer the government to complain about? Well, we'll find something else to complain about. What happens after this confluence of events?
I have a guess.
If you had total mastery, what would happen by the end of this year? What would that look like?
Just for a person's life, my life, or just in general culturally?
Oh, for yourself.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to save the world. We're going to fix the culture. But on this show, we're mostly talking about how to live your life better. I need to put up a slideshow real quick. I'm going to share my screen here because there's a couple things I want to get out there. And I just need to figure out how to do that. So, okay. Don't know why I'm starting with this, but this is exactly what I want to talk about. Whoop. Except we need to pause that, don't we? I need to talk about the 3 languages of politics, but I'm going to start with the 5 languages of love. And why am I going to do that? Robert Heinlein said, "Your enemy is never a villain in his own eyes. Keep this in mind. It may offer a way to make him your friend. If not, you can kill him without hate."
I love that.
And quickly.
And quickly.
Your enemy is never a villain in his own eyes. Okay, the reason this comes up, there was a social media post. I'm sure a lot of you saw it. Quite a few people commented on it if you're in the Ayn Rand fan community or the philosophy community. Because somebody had asked, have you ever known anybody truly evil?
Yeah, that's a complex topic.
It's more complex than you would think.
Right.
A lot of people were quick to answer, oh yeah, I knew this guy, I knew this gal. And then they described somebody who was kind of vicious or even wicked.
Right.
But not really evil, just bad, just a bad person.
Yeah, I would say that the main litmus test for evil, the most obvious one is, if you're a murderer, if you're a rapist, things like that.
Broad scale destruction.
Yeah.
Of values and
right.
and consciously and by intent.
Yep.
But the interesting thing is that I couldn't think of anybody evil. I know some bad people. People, in the better off dead list, people I think the world would be a better place without them. I find it hard to find really evil people. Your enemy is never a villain in his own eyes. That might sound like a stretch, that Robert Heinlein quote. I'm going to justify it by the end of this. We need to talk about the 5 languages of love. The author, Gary Chapman, this sounds like a jump, but trust me on this, follow along. I told you got to listen quick because we're going to do this real fast. The author, Gary Chapman, observes that in seeking to express love or affection, there are 5 common approaches, strategies, modalities. He calls them love languages. The 5 love languages. Listen to this, especially you guys who are looking to woo the fairer sex. Or other guys, whatever you're into. These 5 languages are words of affirmation, quality time, giving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. You can determine a person's primary love language by observing what they themselves offer you. See, the mistake we make is we offer people what we most want. It's not really a mistake, except that that's not necessarily what they're looking for. So there's a quick chart up there. If this interests you, and it should, you need to look up this book on the 5 love languages by Chapman. Incidentally, there is a quiz on Chapman's website. Do a Google search or look in the links we're going to post after the show, and you can take the quiz.
I'm taking it right now.
Amy's taking the love languages quiz right now at number 5, lovelanguages.com.
Mm-hmm.
With questions like, what does it say? My partner helps me out when she knows I'm already tired, versus I get to go somewhere when spending time with my partner. You know, knowing this kind of stuff, it's powerful because you don't just automatically offer what you most want. You actually give people what they want, and it's much more effective. You spend less time and energy, and you get more results. So for example, my primary love languages, when I took the quiz, my primary love language was words of affirmation. I guess that makes sense because, you know, what I think is most attractive in a woman is enthusiasm.
All right.
And I also find that the greatest compliment. So words of affirmation, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. What's really strange is physical touch only came up 13%. Can you believe that? Acts of service, 30%. Incidentally, service doesn't mean sacrifice. I think that's the foot rubs you mentioned.
Yeah. Or it's something like
take out the
chores
trash,
and things like that. Yeah.
Keep the house clean. Don't let the dishes pile up in the sink. Again, the value of knowing your love language is you can tell your partner or prospective partners, you know, you do for me whatever you want, but if you really want me to get the message, this is how I communicate. And if you find out the love language of your partner, that's where the real action is, because you can give them something that actually feels like love to them. Well, what's interesting to me is that this idea of understanding what your partner gets from your communication, how they communicate, how they think about love, how they think about affection, explained politics to me. Or rather, a similar analysis by a guy named Arnold Kling with a K, explained politics to me. Arnold Kling wrote a book called The 3 Languages of Politics. And what he observed, and they did interviews and studies and all sorts of research. A free copy of this book, incidentally, is available on Cato's website, and we'll have the link to that as well. He observed 3 ways people thought about politics, and they map more or less to progressive, conservative, and libertarian. He doesn't say liberal because people would confuse that with classic liberal or libertarian. Progressive and conservative and libertarian. And it turns out that to a libertarian type, let's start with that. A lot of Ayn Rand fans are libertarian types. And they see most political questions in terms of one axis.
Okay.
The question of whether they were free or coerced. Question of whether they gave consent or force was used against them.
Yep.
A conservative won't do that. A conservative will talk about liberty, but what he really cares about is the question of Western civilization or barbarism. A conservative will tell you, yeah, I care about that other stuff. But the real problem is we're destroying Western civ. And a progressive will tell you, well, I care about civilization and I care about consent. But what I really care about are the oppressors out there and the oppressed. The oppressors and the victims. If you can understand those 3 categories, when you have a conversation with a liberal, or you have a conversation with a conservative, you have a conversation with a libertarian, the things they say make so much more sense. if you understand their priorities.
Right.
What they think really matters.
Yep.
You know, a libertarian will communicate along that liberty coercion axis. A conservative will communicate along that civilization barbarism axis. A progressive will communicate along that oppressor oppressed axis.
Yeah.
And again, they'll tell you all the other stuff matters. But you can tell in any conversation what their real priorities are, what really matters to them.
All right. Is that the last slide there?
What is the next slide? It's a further analysis here.
Ah, I see.
In fact, we'll do this real quick.
Okay.
Now, Kling's focus is primarily on communication. How do you communicate with people in the different groups? But the value of his analysis goes much deeper than bridging the communication gap. It also explains the differences in how we think about these things, the thinking gaps. It makes him clear to me that the biggest rift is in thinking, is in ideas. See, my top takeaway, and this is what I want for you, this understanding. The present battles in politics, in culture, in everything, the present battles are battles of ideas. Are your enemies evil or are they stupid? Are they vicious or are they sheep? Think about that for a second. Do you think most of the problem with those you regard as your political and cultured enemies, are they stupid or are they wicked? And my answer is there's a lot of stupidity out there and there's a lot of viciousness out there. But the vast majority of what's wrong out there is neither one of those two. The vast majority of what's wrong is simply the things people believe. And in Kling's model, what their priorities are. If you choose to read Kling's book, and I strongly recommend it, again, Cato's got a copy of the second edition for free. You can download the 2017 edition. The 2019 update is interesting because Kling adds information about how to analyze the Trump presidency. Because Trump is a little bit different because he's not a conservative, he's anti-ideological. As he himself has said, he's not an ideologue. So Kling also analyzes that pragmatism. But this was fascinating to me. And it makes much more sense because I already have that it's in my core that most people aren't evil. They're simply wrong. Now, there's something wrong with you if you get the wrong answers to important moral and cultural and political questions. And I'm not forgiving people their failures in that regard. But to make sense of any politician, to make sense of any cultural leader, to make sense of anybody in the news, to make sense of anything out there, assume just for a second that the people you're trying to figure out, this really hit me with Barack Obama.
Yeah.
All the analysis of Barack Obama, I shouldn't say all the analyses, but many of the analyses of Barack Obama from the conservative side of things, and even from the libertarian side of things, assumed that he was simply a liar out for power.
Right.
And the fascinating thing is that by the end of his 8 years, he had not accumulated much power. From a conservative or libertarian side, you might say he did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But what he could have done to accumulate personal power was far greater than any of what he did. He acted like he actually believed the things he said.
Yep.
The things he tried to accomplish were actually consistent with his ideas.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to get into
true.
whether he did tell lies. We know, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
Right.
We know all of that. And he said a lot of horrible things. You didn't build that.
Yeah.
If you drove on the roads, those were provided by some blah, 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 blah. I'm not defending him. I'm not defending George Bush. I'm certainly not defending Donald Trump, about whom all of this is true. But the point is, nothing that he did makes any sense if you just assume, oh, he was evil.
Right.
Or he was stupid.
Right.
I think George Bush got even more of that. George Bush III, the second George Bush in office. People, oh, he's just an idiot. He's just stupid. Nothing he did makes any sense if you go with stupid or evil. Mm-hmm. But it all makes sense if you assume he actually believed in his ideals. Now, Scott points out Barack Obama loaded the Justice Department with loyalists. He did retain power in D.C. That's all true. And I don't mean to say that there's not extreme power lust in our presidents, especially Bill Clinton. Although, fortunately, the kind of power he wanted didn't last. Mm-hmm. Barack Obama is much more effective in that regard. Or Donald Trump, for that matter. We won't know the full scale of that until we see how things play out over the next few months.
Right. But I think this is a great time. If anybody has any pressing questions that you would like us to answer, or any comments you would like us to share with the folks, please consider a super chat. Go ahead and put in $1 or $2 or $3 or $5 or 400, and you will be supporting a great organization, Ayn Rand Center UK. If you go to aynrandcenter.uk.co or co, you can find them.
.co.uk.
Yeah. Oh, .co.uk.
Ayn Rand Center, and it's center British style, RE at the end. Mm-hmm. aynrandcenter.co.uk. And yes, by all means, you should become a member of the Ayn Rand Center. The link will be posted in the chat here in a moment. And you can become a member for as little as £10 a month. Right now, the exchange rate between the States and the island, the mother country, is favorable to the colonists. So you should take advantage of that. This is a good time to become a member.
Right.
Yes.
Great time to become a member. And again, there's a lot of questions and everything like that. This is, I think, a perspective that I think in objectivism isn't quite as popular.
No, not that this is very controversial. This is not mainstream objectivism.
Right. It isn't. And
it will be, but it's not yet.
Right. It will be, but it's not yet. But yeah, it's the idea that people are generally, they still have that capacity or that faculty of reason, and what powers them, what shapes their lives, what shapes their politics is their ideas that they hold. And now you can get into psychology, you can get into evil motivations. However, you could say, a person, say for instance, a conservative, he really hangs his self-worth. He really feels a great identity towards the idea of Western civilization and tradition and family units and all of that. And the same thing for liberals and progressives who hang their hat on, I am going to stand up for the little dog. I'm going to basically promote justice and equality and make it right for most people. And of course, libertarians will say, I'm going to hang my hat on the idea that of individual rights. And you've got, all kinds of people who are trying to suck me dry and, tax me to death. And I just need to shield myself from that. And I need to promote a political culture of laissez-faire capitalism, which is great, which is what I do. But, I've been lately thinking in terms of, talking with liberals and progressives and couching it in terms of like, well, if a liberal is saying, I am very concerned about making sure that I right the wrongs and promote justice. Well, I can try to possibly bridge that gap by saying, there is harm. Have you ever considered that there might be some harm in taxing people, in terms of politicians taking your money, the IRS taking your money, putting it through a devaluation filter, and then all you do is you just keep trying to take more money from you because that is constantly devalued by their own operations, and it doesn't help anybody in the long run. You're just going to have inflation. You're going to have all sorts of nasty repercussions from it. Don't you think that is hurting? Don't you think that is unjust? And yeah, so I think it's important to understand what is the most important thing that the person is coming from in terms of their politics, and then playing off of that. I think I don't know why, but I think it's sometimes a little bit harder with conservatives because they're not necessarily coming from abstract concepts. They're coming from it's been done before, and therefore it's good.
I have to say, because I know that the reaction of some folks will be, well, you can't talk to liberals. Liberals won't listen to you. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about talking to Bernie Sanders.
Right.
We're not talking about talking to the worst of the left.
Yeah.
We're talking about talking to your Aunt Judy.
Yes.
We're talking about talking to Joe Lunchbucket, the average reasonable person, the average decent American who just happens to be on that other axis.
Yes.
And we have a contribution, Helio.
Yeah, thank you so very much.
Says, that's 5 Bulgarian lev. It's about $3 US. Thank you for that. And not even a question, just the dancing pair there, which is very sweet. And by all means, if anybody has any questions or just wants to contribute to the Ayn Rand Center UK, by all means, put in your super chat. I'm going to sum this up in a way that will sound less controversial and hopefully a little less confusing than what I just said.
And then we're going to reveal what my 5 love language test
I can't wait to find out what your love language is. Or what your combination of love languages, what your priorities are. But again, current events. You know, it's funny, I discussed this same topic a year ago. And of course, a year ago, we were just starting lockdowns. Donald Trump was still the president of the United States. We had the riots just starting, the worst of the summertime riots going on, Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And I said at the time that current events only make sense, can only be understood as a battle of ideas. And this is still as true today as it was a year ago. Current events only make sense as a battle of ideas, and they can only be understood as a battle of ideas.
Right.
People, and not just our side, but people in general, actually believe the things they believe.
Yes.
The problem isn't that people are stupid or vicious, nor hypocritical, nor insane. There is some of that out there, and that's part of the challenge. But the problem is that people actually believe different ideas.
Yes.
Think about when you first started studying philosophy, or when you first encountered Ayn Rand, whichever came first. Hopefully you remember that these ideas weren't always easy. Even if you were one of those people who read her and said, oh, she's just verifying what I already believe. The first time that you went through Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, or Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, oh, that was easy. But what about the first time you went through the Romantic Manifesto?
Yeah.
This stuff isn't easy.
Psychoepistemology. Love it.
And before you knew or believed all of that, you believed other things. Or maybe you didn't know what you believed. The point is, people believe the stuff they believe.
Yes.
People actually believe different ideas about social systems and justice and history and economics and philosophy and life. And that truth, the fundamental fact that ideas matter, means that we face an enormous challenge. But it's also the greatest cause for hope, because that is a challenge that can be met.
Yep. Before you get any further, Mary Aline, thank you so very much. She says, yes, you can talk to leftists. And, this is a question from Scott here. What if someone is coming from assuming you're a bigot or something like that? And what I would say is I would reaffirm their ability to reason and to think for themselves. I would say I don't expect you to believe everything I say. It's up to you to figure out who I am or what I think and whether or not you agree with me. And then go from there. Because, if somebody's coming up to you and saying, you're incapable of reason. You're not going to, what they're saying there is that they're talking to you to antagonize you. And that they're expecting from you unreason, non-consideration. And if you show them that you will be considerate of them and that you also think that you actually believe that they are capable of reason and choice and thought, then that will bring some walls down. So that might be helpful.
Yeah, and that works especially with in-person interaction.
Yes.
If we're talking about the kind of person who on the internet will just, crap on everything you say. You do the same thing any objectivist would do when you encounter somebody who's not open to reason. There's still a crucial distinction to make whether somebody's open to reason and whether they're capable of reason. But again, in certain contexts, all you're doing is playing to the gallery, especially online. If it's on the internet, if you're on a forum or in a YouTube comment thread or in any context in which you're just dealing with essentially a troll, somebody who's not really there on good faith, somebody who's not there to engage, then yes, you give him what he deserves. But at that point, you don't waste a lot of time on them.
Right.
You're playing for the gallery. You're playing for the audience. You're playing for anybody who will come along and sit and see, oh yeah, this guy here, he's not open to reason. He's essentially trolling or wasting our time. These other people, they're saying something I don't agree with, but they're engaging rationally and they said this interesting thing. Okay, whatever. And then a year later, they think about what you said. They see that Ayn Rand book on the shelf, or they just reconsider an idea that they held. You have planted seeds, and sometimes that's the best thing you can do.
Yes. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry you believe that I'm incapable of reason, or I'm sorry you think that you're incapable of reason because you're trolling, and just walk away.
Yes. Yes. And the I'm sorry part, you're not sorry to them. You're not apologizing to them. All you're doing is you are asserting your standards. In other words, you're remaining gracious, not for their sake. You're above all that.
Yes.
You are above that interaction. Because you're right, you don't give people more than they deserve, but you also don't care what they deserve. What you care about is maintaining your own standards. We talked about that in our episode on benevolence. The reason why you remain benevolent is not because you're trying to improve their world. You are living in your world by your standards. It's why you want to be a gentleman. Not because of the people that you're interacting with always deserve that, but because you do.
Yeah. Scott mentioned sometimes the audience wants to see the evil be fought. Now, that is true, but you can't say anything against the evil unless there's actually something of substance, unless they have a positive assertion.
Well, if the audience just wants to see, like if they're just rabble-rousing, if you're just trying to boost the troops.
If you like Jerry Springer.
Bank memes and all of that. If that is something you enjoy, go for it.
Yeah.
I can't really function that way. I don't get bank memes. I don't get sarcasm. I don't get... This is a battle of ideas. At the point at which it's all just mockery and giving them what they deserve, if you enjoy that, do it, because it's what they deserve.
Yeah,
my life is too short for that. I got time for that stuff.
I don't like to see people's people waging battles with each other and just in that way where there's no ideas involved in it. There's no solutions. There's no anything to live by, any positive assertions to actually take away from it.
Yeah. And again, there are people who fight those battles that way, and more power to them.
I used to be one of those people when I was a Nietzschean existentialist punk rocker.
The problem is the way I see most people doing it undercuts the importance of ideas.
That's correct.
That's what I see. But again, if that's the battlefield you're on, by all means, play the game that way. I think life's too short. And I don't think that's how ultimately we're going to win this stuff. Mary Eileen puts in another super chat.
Actually, I think 3
and
total.
Also asks, or says rather, I would ask why they think I'm a bigot, politely,
Right.
genuinely.
Yeah.
If it isn't a sincere question on my part, I'm wasting my time.
Yes.
If still rude, bye.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely, Marilyn.
Scott, in another non-super chat says, well, someone has to do it. Okay, I enjoy it a little.
You have fun with that.
Again, there are those types, and there are even people out there who that's actually how you get through to them.
That's true.
There are people in this battlefield who do respond to that, who may eventually, only put up the white flag and say, okay, I was just being an ass, and I'll listen to what you say now. So I get it. I don't mean to say that everybody should be walking around in a tan suit and being the gentleman 24/7.
Being the lady 24/7.
Yes. Even though I hope I've made my point, though. And this is a battle of ideas.
Yes.
And ideas matter.
Yeah. And one other thing I want to say is that it's easy to say, well, so-and-so, I recently had an exchange with a really, really great person who I really, really admire on Facebook. And I mentioned, well, this was in regard to the Republican politicians and pundits now coming out saying, oh, yes, we should all get vaccinated. Really, we're vaccinated, all get vaccinated. And so that was a bit of a turn, a little flip-flop, right? And so I suggested, well, maybe they are actually seeing what's happening in the United Kingdom, what's happening in India, what's happening in a lot of places with the Delta variant. And that is very concerning. It's very concerning. And his response was, I love your optimism. Ha ha ha. No, I actually think that they've got some polls out there that's telling them that they shouldn't actually be doing this to their constituents because it's going to look bad for them afterwards and that they might be killing them. I honestly think, sure, that may be a part of it. It probably is. But I also think that a person's not going to say that because politicians are human beings. And that's, I think, a lot of times people forget this. They're not just a bunch of, crazy power hungry thugs, not all the time, but they actually you can actually get through to them.
It's interesting, too, because people have given me that objection. And I said, I know they're power lusters. I know they're out for more power. I know they're out to strengthen their political position. Mm-hmm. How do they do that? Well, they do that by posturing as idealists.
Yes.
In other words, they do that by acting as though they actually believe what they say. Mm-hmm. They do that by virtue of their actual ideas. So even if they are being hypocrites,
yes,
it's still a war of ideas.
Yeah.
To the extent that you can show that they're actually just out for power and you can fight them on that level, great.
Yeah.
But even in the most cynical or hypocritical cases, Barack Obama can't say you didn't build that mm-hmm. in a culture where everybody knows you did. And they admire Jeff Bezos and they admire Richard Branson.
Right. And I mean, you can take an Obama who says you didn't build that. And now you can, you don't have to assume that the guy is saying, I'm going to come for you and your guns tomorrow. You might imagine him saying it because he actually does believe in altruism. He actually does believe in the idea that, and also collectivism and tribalism. He believes that you can't get along unless you're in a society of people who are looking out for each other constantly. And therefore, whatever you do, even if it's a great idea and you came up with it, somebody else is going to collaborate with you. So this is the really, really like the maybe perhaps naive, maybe overly optimistic viewpoint of what Obama's saying here. But then you can kind of say, okay, if this is what you're saying, then let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in terms of ideas. If your assumption first off the bat is he's coming for me and my guns and my house and my car and everything, you're obviously not going to think that he's reasonable or dealable with, or even those ideas that he's espousing are going to be capable of being reasoned out with other people.
Yeah, you can't do anything with anybody at that level other than, pull out the firearms.
Right.
And that's not where this battle is being fought, and it's not where this battle will be won. If it gets to the point where it's down to your guns, yeah, essentially the battle is over. Fortunately, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and Scott says, don't you, they say, don't you care about the poor? And I'll say, I care about the poor a heck of a lot more than you do.
Yes.
Because if you cared about the poor, you would actually realize that poor people are not, dysfunctional adults. Yes. That they can think for themselves and they can act for themselves and they can empower themselves. You're ignoring that.
I care about the liberty of the poor.
Right.
I care about the rights of the poor.
Yes.
I care about the poor having all of the same freedoms as the rich.
Yes.
I want them to be exactly as free as Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And Jeff Bezos, who incidentally has done more for the poor just by virtue of creating the world's largest company. Yep. And employing not just all of the line workers, but all of the executives and all of the people around the world. The 100,000 people who have worked for Amazon, who have taken home their hard-earned pay and earned the benefits they have and invested in the company and delivered these incredible products to all of these people. Mm-hmm. Jeff Bezos has done more for the poor than any politician, any do-gooder in the world. Don't even get me started on that. We had that conversation earlier on the Ayn Rand Center UK's TDO, the Daily Objectivist.
Yeah, and of course, as objectivists, we say that doesn't make him morally noble. The fact that his actions help others.
Well, that's a good point. That's not what it's about.
Right.
Again, I go back to, I will defend the rights of the poor better than the average do-gooder.
Yeah.
And I will do more for the poor just by leaving him alone. And leaving the rich alone and letting all the opportunity that flows from that happen. So my takeaway point is learn the 5 languages of love. Learn how to communicate with the people that you have affection for, not just your romantic partners. Mm-hmm. This works with your children. It works with your family. It works with your friends.
Oh.
Learn the 5 languages of love and you can understand the people that you interact with. Learn the 3 languages of politics and you can do the same. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of the 5 languages of love, Amy, did you finish taking the 5 languages quiz at 5lovelanguages.com?
Yes, I did.
So what is your top love language? What order do they fall in?
I'm going to start from the bottom up. So at 7% is receiving gifts.
Receiving, now that surprises me. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say I'm surprised. See, this is what happens. This is why you do this. Okay, so very low on the list of priorities is receiving gifts. Gotcha.
Is the newlywed game is going on here. Number 10 is acts of service.
Acts of service. Okay.
Yep.
10, so a little bit, not much.
23% is quality time.
Quality time. Well, right in the middle there. That's a challenging one to meet.
Yeah, but it's even if it's a half an hour playing a board game,
yes,
or going out for a walk,
something besides really the usual thing, and don't be staring at your phone when you're giving somebody quality time. Okay,
true.
What's the number 2?
Okay, at 27% comes in words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Well, that's something I admire about you is that you appreciate words of affirmation.
I admire your admiration of words of affirmation and my admiration. I really admire that about you.
Well, I feel really visible about that. And so I thank you for saying that thing. And what's your number 1 love language?
Coming in at 33%, number 1 is physical touch.
Okay. We laugh, but take that quiz.
Yeah.
Exchange your answers with whoever you're with. And get more of it's not getting more what you want. This isn't about getting what you want. This is about getting what communicates affection. This is about actually telling your partner what you want them to hear in the language that works best for them.
Right.
And again, the parallels to the 3 languages of politics, I hope you've at least got some sense of that.
Yeah, you can take the approach, I want to understand you more and your political ideas more. Show me how I can understand this and help me understand. Give me the words, Give me your vocabulary.
And you can communicate better when you know you're talking to a liberal and he doesn't think that liberty is as important as fairness. Well, then you can speak the objectivist language of justice, and you can talk about actually giving people what they deserve and not some abstract idea of the way you'd like to see the world. I want to make sure the poor actually receive everything that they deserve. And that includes the freedom of, for example, the people who provide jobs to do what they do, which will create better situations for the poor, create more opportunity. And it's not for them, it's not a sacrifice, it's not altruism. No, it's simply that it will be more just, it will be more right, it will be more fair if people get what they deserve and the government's not standing in the way of that. You can have these conversations better if you know where people are coming from. And
Scott asks an interesting question. He says, what is the strangest place to make whoopee? And my answer is in a polling booth, of course.
Of course. I'll vote for that.
Yes. And thank you, Bonnie. She says, I love that good/bad chart with regard to the language of politics, because if you try to integrate it, the bottom words are similar. So the common thread would address the evil of oppressor/barbarism/aggression in terms they can see.
Good. Excellent. So as we wrap up, I will be posting the show notes for this show on Facebook, which you can access my Facebook on robertnasir.com. And I'll be posting it on Twitter as well, the link to that. Incidentally, if you would like to support what we do, obviously, you've been supporting the Ayn Rand Center UK through your super chat, and the link was posted. I think it'll be posted again to the Ayn Rand Center UK's website, aynrandcenter.co.uk, where you can become a member. If you'd like to support what we do on the Robert Nasir side of things, go to robertnasir.com. You'll find links to our Patreon and a PayPal link for one-time contributions as well. You have our heart if you will do that for us. I'm sure Amy's about to post that link.
Yes, I have.
We will be back next Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 British Time. And you can also catch us Sunday, 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir at 6 o'clock on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Robert Nasir. Thank you so much for listening to me rant about this. It's one of my pet topics.
Thank you, guys.
I really think the world makes more sense once you realize this is a battle of ideas.
Right.
There's hypocrisy, there's stupidity, there is evil, there is all of those things out there. None of it makes a scrap of sense without the ideas. And most people actually believe what they believe.
Yep.
This stuff matters. It's why Ayn Rand is the most important intellectual figure in the 20th century and the most important one to us in the 21st century. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate that. We're going to go over to Clubhouse. You can get us on audio. You can talk to us, talk back to us, and let's talk about politics. Let's talk about love. And we'll see you there in a minute. Thank you so much.
Great. See you there.